The latest from Cairo, and this could be one of the more significant turns in the crisis. Egypt's Vice President Omar Suliman met with opposition groups just a while ago, and reports from the media say he has endorsed a plan to allow freedom of the press, to release those who have been jailed since the protests began, and to lift the so-called emergency laws when security permits. These are the laws, basically, that give the government dictatorial powers. We're also told he agreed to set up committees to discuss new constitutional amendments to open up Egypt's electoral process. We want to go to Cairo to get the latest on all of this from our correspondents who've been covering this from the beginning: Elizabeth Palmer, Mark Strassman, and Terry McCarthy. To Elizabeth first. Liz, what do you make of these reports that the vice president has now told these opposition groups that he met with this morning that they are making plans to restore freedom of the press, to release the demonstrators who've been arrested, and to repeal the so-called emergency laws which give Hosni Mubarak dictatorial powers?
Well, these are clearly substantial talks, and the signs are good. The opposition has already said they were positive and that the government has promised to come up with a roadmap for going forward. But make no mistake, the demonstrators, tens, hundreds of thousands of them, are not going to go anywhere until they see the end of Hosni Mubarak. At this stage, that may be a symbolic victory, but it's going to be necessary to get the people to go home.
And what about the mood of these demonstrators that are coming into the square this morning? Because I understand a lot of people are coming back.
It's extraordinary, this resolve. Once negotiations got underway yesterday, I thought maybe the steam would go out of this thing, because in effect, this uprising has already won important concessions, unthinkable concessions even a week ago. However, after the workday ended, late afternoon, down they came again. They are not giving up. And as I speak to you, the lineup is stretching all the way back over the bridge, and the party mood is back. It's fiesta time down there.
Do you think, Mark Strassman, that the Army will try to clear out these protesters? What sense do you have of what the government's going to do now?
Bob, yesterday that seemed like a possibility. They were tightening the ring around the square. The tanks, the security checkpoints became choke points, almost restricting the access of people to a large degree. Today, though, I mean, look at the crowd behind me here. It's 100,000 people, tens of thousands at least, and people just keep on coming, and the Army is letting them in. I think for now, the Army's just decided to back off and let this happen. I think they, like all of us, recognize that it's one thing to have 10,000 diehards day after day come to the square, but when 2 weeks in on a work day, you can get 100,000 people to crowd the square like this, this is a movement that has staying power and has touched a nerve in this country.
And Terry McCarthy, I know you are just back. You've been across the river there talking to human rights people. What do they think the situation is now? Do they see some of the brutality that we saw before? Do they think we've seen the end of that, or are they still pretty wary about all this?
No, Bob, I have to say that they're actually extremely worried. Their concern is that what's happening now is the army is doing a cosmetic transition of power from Mubarak to Suleiman, but the security apparatus for which Egypt is renowned throughout the Middle East, Egypt's torturers, Egypt's prisons are renowned throughout the Middle East for their cruelty, and they're afraid that these very brutal methods of repression will stay in place. There is great concern that once the eyes of the media moves away from Cairo, that there will be another wave of mass arrests. We know that they've been watching the bloggers, the activists very closely, and so the human rights watchers are extremely concerned. We ourselves had an experience. A friend of mine was caught just outside where he was staying just 2 nights ago by some vigilantes and was pretty viciously beaten up. They were trying to throw him into a truck, and he screamed and shouted, and finally one person called some policemen who managed to just prize him away just in time. But it's important to remember that atmosphere of fear is still very close to the surface here, Bob.
And Mark Strassman, the demonstrators or the leaders, whoever they are, seem to be calling for another 1 million people. Do you think they'll reach that goal? And what will those people do once they get there?
it's hard to say where they'll meet the goal, but clearly this is a representation of just how many folks out there want to respond. There's supposed to be 2 more of those million-strong marches this week. And once they get there, you're going to see what you see behind me. At least that's the plan as far as we know it. This is a sort of a combination of a religious revival, political convention, and bloc party. And they stand around, they hear the chants for change, they sing, they lock hands. It's all very peaceful, but it's also very passionate. And the passion is what is driving this thing. And so when they put out the call for more people to come on down, the people are turning out.
Liz Palmer, what do you sense is going to happen now from here on in today? I mean, it seems to me that this today has marked some sort of a turning point. How long it lasts, I know none of us can say, but what's your sense of where we are right now?
Well, in a period of serious engagement. Everybody is wondering what's going on inside Mubarak's office and his close confidants. It's a black box. We don't know. But I spoke to somebody very influential and well-connected recently, and he says, I think he gets the message now. He's furious because he says he doesn't want to bow to the riffraff in the square, but he is beginning to realize that there's only one way, and that's through the exit door.
And what about the participation today of the Muslim Brotherhood? As far as I know, this is the first time anybody there has ever met with them in a serious way. What comes of that?
Well, it's extraordinary. I mean, they were a banned political party. They've been terribly repressed in this country since 1954, and today there they were at the table. Extraordinary. They also seem to be showing some real political wisdom. They say they're not going to run a presidential candidate. Apparently, they don't want to taint whatever new government is coming with charges of extremism. So that's a very auspicious sign. People showing political maturity that I don't think a lot of observers thought was possible.
All right. I want to thank all 3 of you for being with us this morning. Stay safe, and we'll be coming back to you. Thanks so much. The situation in Cairo has not gone unnoticed in the rest of the region, of course. There have been demonstrations in Jordan, for example, where King Abdullah has already replaced his entire cabinet. Earlier this morning, I talked to the king's uncle, Prince Hassan, about the situation there.
There are sporadic demonstrations, and I think that there is a lot of sympathy and empathy with the youth movement that came into the streets on the 25th of January in Egypt. It's all about youth, equity, the participation, that is to say, unemployment. And I think that this will not go away, whatever new government takes over.
Do you think it would help the situation across the region if President Mubarak stepped down now?
Well, I think the question is not whether he'll step down. He said that he'll step down, but it's a question of what follows. And as I understand, his vice president has had the agreement of all the parties to discuss the constitution. I make a distinction that in Jordan we already have a constitution which I don't think is a subject of major controversy. But in terms of the immediate future, I just want to say that this region is suffering from 2 elephants in the room. One is the instability of the price of oil, which has always been the case, and the other is the Arab-Israeli conflict. So it's almost as if people outside this region are saying, you can't reform and you can't improve your civil rights record because of the emergency powers that were implemented because of the scarcity of oil resources, high pricing and so forth that might affect other parts of the world.
Are you concerned that the Muslim Brotherhood will step into this vacuum?
They are not homogeneous, and they're certainly not Al-Qaeda. They're certainly aware of Egypt's responsibilities towards that second elephant, the peace treaty, which I hope will cease to be a white elephant and be recognized through the transition of regimes, because no man lives forever, and President Mubarak, with all due respect, is a man of a certain age. So I personally don't think that they are participating, as they did in 1989 in Jordan after elections, was an end in itself. I mean, 4 years later, many of them were voted out of office. So I think to test people on the democratic template is better than not to test them at all.
All right. Your Highness, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much indeed.